First of all, I want to tell you that I'm not a Johnny-come-lately to the issue of the state of Jefferson. I've been talking about this for years. In fact, when I first ran for political office 4 years ago, I actually had a section on separating California into separate states on my website. But I've got to realize, or I came to the conclusion that the state of Jefferson, the way it's oriented or laid out at the present time, just isn't a viable way of doing things. But there is a viable way. There is a viable way. So here's the problem. I don't know if any of you saw the CBS documentary on the state of Jefferson. It was out about 2 weeks ago. It was pretty good. I thought it was pretty good. And one of the things they said in that I disagreed with is they said, you know, the bar is pretty high to under our Constitution to allow a state to divide into separate states. And I disagree with that. The bar is actually, in my view, pretty low. You know what it takes? A simple majority of our state legislature has to vote for it, and then a simple majority of Congress also has to vote for it. That's not a very high bar. But it's a political issue. It's a political issue, and we need to face the political issue if we really want to make this thing happen. The fact of the matter is, California has a legislature that's not only a Democratic-leaning legislature, but has a super majority. The state of Oregon also has two legislative bodies that are predominantly Democrat. So the first thing that I would tell you is it's too complicated to try to accomplish three things. That is, get the legislature in California, the legislature in Oregon, and then Congress to pass this. I think we got to give up on trying to bring in those southern Oregon counties. We've got to just deal with California. 2 steps is always easier than 3 steps, okay? Now, when I go around talking about this, what I find is almost every Republican I talk with loves the idea. And almost every Democrat that I talk to hates the idea. In fact, they not only hate the idea, they think we're crazy when we're even talking about it. So, what are we going to do to make this thing work? Well, obviously, we got to somehow start talking Democrats into this idea and making them realize it's really a good thing, and it is a good thing. And let's just talk about why it's a good thing for a minute. Number one, and I guess I'm the only one that's using this statistic, but I think it's a great statistic. We are grossly underrepresented in Washington, D.C. The 22 smallest populated states in the United States, when you add their populations together, it's just about equal to the California population. But in California, we have 2 senators representing us back in Washington, D.C. Those 22 other states have 44 senators representing them. And the result of that is that California is financing most of those 22 other states. If you look at the statistics, over the last 20 years, California has sent over $100 billion more to Washington, D.C. than we've gotten back in any form. That's a billion with a B. A lot of that comes from our underrepresentation, particularly in the Senate. Now, and when our forefathers came to this great compromise in the Constitution where they made the House of Representatives based on population and the Senate based on the states, with everybody having 2 state senators, they could not have conceived of a state the size of California with such a huge population. If California was a country, it would have the 8th largest economy all by itself. And so the direct consequence of being unrepresented or underrepresented in Washington, D.C. is we're not getting our fair share of federal benefits. I propose something a little bit different than the state of Jefferson because I'm looking for a practical way to sell it. We got to get the Democrats on board. How are we going to do that? And it's my view that we really need to divide California into 3 states rather than 2, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. But in addition to being underrepresented in Washington, D.C., let's face it, if we were to divide California into 3 parts, California's government is a big government. It's almost an unmanageable government. If we divide it into 3 parts, it would be 1/3. Each government would be roughly 1/3 and a much more manageable government. But the final point, and this is the most important, and both these gentlemen talked about it, is water. We know that Southern California is really thirsty for our water. And they're not only thirsty to send our water down to the farms in Southern California, or even fill the swimming pools and water the golf courses with our water. Now we're moving into a world of fracking. And most of that fracking is going to be done in Southern California. And guess what? Fracking requires an unbelievable amount of water. And that's why they need our water. That's one of the main reasons they need our water, and they want it now. Now, this twin tunnel idea is ridiculous. Just 2 points, because these gentlemen have already kind of covered the obvious, but 2 things that bother me about it. Number one, the twin tunnel, they've done this $200 million study to figure out how much water they can take out of the Sacramento River without doing irreparable damage. And they figured it out, and guess what? They're putting in pumps that'll pump 50% more than that amount that would be the cutoff point of doing irreparable damage. So why do you think they're putting in such huge pumps for this? And secondly, and I think Ryan talked about this, how is this going to be paid for? Well, we're going to sell bonds and pay for it that way, but eventually those bonds have to be retired. And how is it going to be retired? The water companies in Southern California are going to pay for those bonds. And you know something? We're going to have a year with some drought, and there's going to be a crunch to pay those bonds, and there's going to be a real temptation to just ruin our environment by sending all our water south to pay those bonds. We've got to stop this. Now, why is this connected with the state of Jefferson? You remember about 20 years ago we went through this vote on the peripheral canal, and we defeated it. It's coming again. It's coming again because there's going to be enough controversy over this that there's going to be a public vote on what we do about this. And guess what? We're going to get outvoted by all those Southern California voters. Why don't we divide the state now before that vote comes, divide it so that the Northern California is the source of all that water, so that we can protect our water and not be outvoted by those people to the south. I think the time has come. We got to do it now. You know, the last state to divide like this was West Virginia and Virginia. That was over the issue of slavery. Well, I think water is an equally big, well, it's maybe not equally big, but it's certainly a really important issue that forces us to move and move now. So, this is the sales pitch. We can convince the Republicans to do this. What we've got to do is convince the Democrats. I am the person, if elected to the Assembly, somebody's got to be in either the state Senate or the state Assembly pushing for this division of the state. There's got to be somebody that's behind it and pushing for it, and somebody who's not going to only be limited to talking to Republicans about it, because that's an easy sell. We need a Democrat that can convince Democrats that this is the right thing to do, and I'm the right person to do that. And I ask for your vote. Thank you.